Alrighty, folks, we're just going to jump in, but thank you so much for coming. This is our first webinar. Today we'll be going over how to work with Rhino, Grasshopper, a little bit of Touch Designer, and Foveate. So, go to the next slide here. Here's the agenda for today. We're going to do a quick overview of Foveate, then we'll jump into some Rhino and Grasshopper, a little bit of Touch Designer, then eventually we'll have a Q&A, and you can ask us a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm Ki-tae Kim. I'm one of the co-founders of Foveate. My background's in architecture and experiential design. So a lot of the product of Foveate is informed by my experience working on Archimedia installations, interactive installations at museums, galleries, touring, and then permanent installs as well. Ian Petrarca will be managing the chat. He's the other co-founder. Ian's experience is also similarly in experiential, more in things like theme parks. He's worked on some of the largest theme parks in the world, like Cartoon Network in Dubai, installations in permanent lobbies and things like that, executive briefing centers, so on and so forth. So a quick overview of Foveate. Foveate is a 3D presentation platform built for architects, designers, engineers, technologists to all be able to have one source of truth that they can visualize and build around. It's kind of a Frankenstein baby of Google Slides and Enscape, or Google Slides and Unreal, something like that. The idea is with Foveate, you can take your CAD files from apps like Rhino, SketchUp, Revit, 3ds Max, Vectorworks, be able to combine them with other kinds of media, let's say renders from Enscape, renders from V-Ray, videos, let's say from Touch Designer, if you want to simulate content, screen content that's on LED walls or projectors, and then be able to create camera points of view in space that you can annotate and walk people through, just like a slide deck. So with Foveate, people make interactive presentations, digital twins, and virtual walkthroughs. And the whole idea is, instead of having all this information scattered in different places, we have a single source of truth using the 3D that we work in every day that everybody can intuitively walk through and understand what we're all trying to build together. So it doesn't matter what media format somebody has their work in. The idea is that everything that you would normally put into a slide deck presentation can now be anchored contextually into a spatial model, and then everybody can have visibility into the project. Doesn't matter if they're the architect, designer, technologist actually working in the 3D, or if they're a PM, a manager, director, producer who is overseeing the project that maybe doesn't usually have skills in the 3D, but they would get a lot of benefit from understanding what's happening. And then finally, clients and stakeholders, possibly the most important decision makers on a project, who oftentimes have zero technical knowledge, that have all the power in the project and need to be able to have the 3D information in order to make decisions better, faster, more clearly. The problem that Foveate's really trying to solve is, how can we communicate spaces more intuitively? So for example, right now, we've only been communicating spatial experiences via slide decks, so mostly PDFs, and then 360 tours became a thing. But the thing is, when you have all these disparate pieces of content in drawing form, where clients don't really understand scale, and they can't really see the the space from the plan drawing, for example, and then renders, which are not always the most realistic. For example, this Allbirds installation, they are more like collages than they are paintings, or than they are spatial experiences. And then finally, things like technical drawings, which a very few select group of people can actually read and understand what they're trying to convey. So for Foveate, we're trying to answer the question is, how can we build better? How can we communicate our creative ideas in a more intuitive, faster, and easier to update way? So for the benefits of using Foveate, we want people to have a more cost-effective way of communicating their designs. So instead of producing PDF slide decks, where generally people will spend 20 to 60 hours creating a PowerPoint or Google Slides deck, most of that is just spent formatting. They can use Foveate to easily create a 3D presentation right from the CAD that they're already working in, and then easily update that as they go on. So we know that creative folks like yourself work very iteratively, and need to be able to update their work quickly. I remember when I was working in experiential design, we'd have all sorts of changes last minute. And in order to update your InDesign deck, right, you now have to take all your renders again. You have to replace all the links with the same exact names inside your InDesign folder. And then you have to export your PDF, probably go to smallpdf.com, optimize and compress that, and then finally send that and show that to the client. Nowadays, all this work is remote, and people are still only able to present with basically screen sharing that's always choppy in Google Slides. So we're really trying to help people there with how can we help architects, designers, technologists work remotely and asynchronously. So with Foveate, you can drag and drop all your materials in, create your interactive presentation, invite your team members and clients, share it on a link, and then people can check in on it when they have time. So trying to be more efficient with how we're sharing ideas and working around everyone's busy schedules. And then another thing that we really are trying to do with Foveate is help you express your ideas more creatively. Architects, designers, technologists, you are the most creative people working on the most ambitious projects, things that no one's ever seen before, right? So they can be very difficult to understand. By using the 3D and walking people through it like as if you had built a physical model and handed it to them, we want to give everybody an intuitive experience that they would have had had we been 3D printing a model or something like that. And them understanding it is what allows them to fall in love with it and push forward on the design. And then finally, with previs and pre-design in general, that's kind of where all the work needs to happen. And then you can reduce all the pains that would happen on site later once these decisions are made. So the idea is with something like Foveate, you have a sandbox where everybody can test ideas and talk about what's going to happen. And then later, once things actually get to site, down the line in a couple of months or even years, then all these problems have already been foreseen, and we can reduce the change orders and crazy changes, last minute changes that might have to happen on site, which are usually the most expensive part. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the demo phase here. And we'll start being here in Rhino. So this is, we'll be taking a look at pavilion design. This is a design by Ez Devlin, the scenographer. So this is a kind of crazy Dubai Expo design. And the idea is that it was a temporary structure that people could climb on top of. And then once they got to this point up here, they'd be able to type in or speak into this machine that would take their words and then display it on the front of this structure here. So the idea with something like Rhino is that Rhino is a super creative CAD modeling tool, right? When you're using a Rhino, it's because you're building something that you simply cannot do in other CAD and BIM modeling software. Rhino is very flexible in that way. We used it a lot at my old studio. Also because of Grasshopper. And for those of you who don't know, Grasshopper is a node-based programming language. So this allows you to design parametrically, or rather design in a computational fashion where you are scripting using these nodes and wires here, and that allows you to generate designs from it. So this whole red structure here, we will generate now with Grasshopper. So I've gone ahead and drawn all of these curves, just these little boxes, to make a sort of cylinder shape. So that is referenced here by this curve unit. And this is very common on kind of the more experiential projects where you need to have a flexible design where you give, let's say, an artist or director control over how this thing is going to come out, and they may not have the modeling experience you do. So this can really save you a lot of time by giving them a couple simple sliders that they can use to influence the final product. I'll turn on what this Grasshopper script looks like. So this is the generated geometry. What this is doing is it's taking that curve data and then it's extruding it along a path so that it connects the smaller rectangles here to these larger ones that are shifted away. And now here the artist has control over the tilt of the final face of all of these. So that's what this little slider does here. And now they can also choose how big the final face is and how far it extends. So with this, now that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and we'll bake this geometry. Now this is necessary to do when you are exporting, because with Grasshopper, none of this geometry is finalized yet. So we're going to bake it to this layer, layer 08. We'll name this baked geometry. And now it is realized in our scene. We can pick it. I'll go ahead and turn this off. We'll move this window away down here a little bit. And it's now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into rendered mode. And the reason why we do this is when you are exporting from Rhino to Foveate, Foveate will use the materials coming from Rhino. Any physically based materials are what you're going to want to do, because the format that we're going to be exporting in, the GLTF, uses physically based materials. And that is utilized in Foveate to create the lighting and reflections inside of the scene. So we're going to go ahead and take this physically based sort of copper material. We're going to place it onto here. As you can see now, it's all placed onto there. And then we have this kind of dark metal. It's already applied to this unit here. We'll go ahead and apply that. Let's say, oh, we can turn on some other layers here. Always good to name your layers. We'll call this one glass. Right. So this, we've taken a sort of glassy material. So we turned the roughness all the way down. Roughness 0 makes it shiny. Then we turned opacity down as well to make it simulate glass. So here we have our beautiful design. And then we're going to go ahead and go File, Export Selected. Then we're going to pick everything in the scene. Now the menu will pop up here. We're going to call this Devlin V4. Now, as for options, I have a standard set of options that we always use for Foveate. You can copy these. Basically, you need to check on map Rhino Z to GLTF-Y because the up direction is different in different file formats and apps. Export materials, you can leave these 3 off, and then you don't have to change anything for mesh. And for compression, Rhino luckily does support mesh compression. It does not change the geometry, so this is lossless. This just sort of affects the underlying numbers that's in your file. We'll press OK and then save. Now the great thing about Rhino 8 is this GLTF exporter is now natively built in using C++, so it's super fast. The other versions of Rhino before Rhino 8 unfortunately do not have this, so they're a little weaker in that sense. You can use the package manager to install a GLTF plugin, and that works as well, or you can export out an FBX or 30M from Rhino to Foveate. The downside being those are much bigger file sizes because they don't support compression and cannot be optimized as well, but they are doable. So now we've exported this. We'll go ahead and jump back to our browser here. We'll go to our Foveate dashboard. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new scene. Now with Foveate, kind of the idea is you don't have to set anything up. It's a fully realized 3D scene for you. So unlike something like Unreal or something like that, you don't need to go set up a sun and do all this stuff. It's just ready to go. So we'll call this scene Devlin dash Rhino. And then we'll be able to go to our file explorer here and jump to the folder that has our file. And now we can just drag and drop our GLB right onto the screen. So Foveate will automatically optimize and render said model right into the scene here. We'll turn off our grid. We don't really need that for now. And you can use left click to orbit, right click to pan, scroll to zoom. And Foveate has a real-time post-processing stack So we can go into our scene settings here and be able to adjust the ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion is the same thing as Arctic mode in Rhino. They just kind of have a funky name for it. But this is what adds all these lovely shadows on top of your design to make it more realistic and kind of give people those spatial cues of how it's working in space. Now with Foveate, we also use a HDR for the image-based lighting. So if you change the background type here from color to image sphere, this is going to use that HDR now as the background to your scene. And we have a library of all these great 8K HDRs that you can utilize in order to adjust the look and feel of your scene. So this real life project was, I believe, in Dubai or somewhere in the UAE. And this was more of a desert setting. So we can change this to a kind of desert dusk background. And Foveate has some built-in ground planes. So we can go ahead and add this ground here. Because we exported with a GLB and it uses physically based materials, it means that the lighting and reflections of metallic and glossy surfaces like glass will reflect the HDR that's in the scene. So you can see if I go to the environment here and I rotate the HDR, it updates all of the lighting and reflections on top of these shiny materials. So that's looking pretty good. Now with Foveate, now this is just the model, but really what we want to do is be able to walk people through this design. So for example, we could just fly to any point of view here and add this, click this blue button, which is called Add Moments. Now moments are the 3D slides of a 3D presentation. So they're a combination of a camera point of view in space, the FOV, the length of time it takes to get there, and then attachments. So moments can trigger video textures to play. They can have an audio file play. You can attach images or PDF drawings. Basically, all the things that you would need to do to communicate your design fully can be done using moments. And moments are what allow people to use your 3D presentation just like PowerPoint using the play button and these arrow keys. So we've made moment 1 here. Call that moment 1. You can add any sort of text. So there's a title and description. It also gives you a profile picture and a timestamp. So this is showing who made this moment. And if you were to invite your teammates or other people to this scene, let's say a project manager or something like that, they could create their own moments to comment on a design, and you can see exactly when they did it. So you make sure that you're up to date. So that's moment 1. Now we can fly forward here, and this is the base of these stairs. So we could call this exterior staircase. Now we've made 2 moments. So I could jump back to the first moment and now go to the second moment, just like that using these arrow keys. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to do the same thing. And each moment also has their FOV and how long it takes to get there. So if you want to make these more cinematic, you can change these values and FOV will automatically update them for you. So now it's going to take 5 seconds to get to this point of view, and the FOV is going to change to 35. Now let's showcase maybe some of the other things that you can do with Foveate. So here we have a sort of top-down render of this project. So what we could do is fly to this moment, to this point of view rather, and create a moment here. And then go back to this image, drag and drop that in. It'll appear here in our assets list. This is just a view capture from Rhino. And I can go to the moment here and select that image. So now that will appear inside the moment label. So this is good if you have, let's say, a drawing with annotations or something like that, and someone can understand fully where that drawing is supposed to be. So we have some, let's say, renders here. I have this lovely render. So if you're working with a visualizer, someone who's super good at rendering, what they could do, oh, let me just name this moment. Plan view. So if you're working with the visualizer, and shout out to Peter in the chat, who graciously gave us a license to Enscape to be able to create some of these renders. We can go and fly to a certain point of view, this is actually pretty similar to the first moment we made here. And we could go ahead and attach that image to this point of view. So now when someone goes to moment 1, let's call this render view, they can click that button, be able to see this render. So we'll edit this moment to be a little bit closer to that image here. We're editing the camera position and now editing the target, i.e. where the camera is looking. That's pretty good. Now we have a very high quality render mixed with a contextual 3D model that gives it spatial awareness. So this is a way you could have someone who's visualizing, whether they're part of your team or perhaps an outside firm, be able to use your renders, or use their renders rather, with your CAD model. So this is a way that people working in 3ds Max and Corona or V-Ray who are doing the highest level renders can now work with you and be able to give the viewers more context into a project and give it really that high quality polish. And now you don't have to worry about what are the aspect ratios or resolutions of these images. They can just be attached and automatically work in Foveate like this. And as someone jumps between moments, these images of course update as well. And Foveate designed to be highly iterative, right? So we have this model, but what happens if you go back here, you're working with your artist, and all of a sudden, they hated that design. So you could go back here to our Grasshopper script, and this is part of the reason why Grasshopper is so great. And what they actually want to do is change the design to be, much more tilted and to be, let's say, smaller. And they want it to extend out further. So here someone is able to very, very quickly change design without needing to model again at all. And then you can simply create a new layer called Baked Geometry 2, and then be able to rebake this geometry and do a second design iteration. Apply your material, or let's say rather that they want to change the material. They don't want it to be this bronze. They want it to be like this black material. Ooh, actually, let's make it even more different. We'll duplicate this. We don't want to change our other instance. And then we can go ahead and change the base color. They want to be actually much, much more bold. They want to do like a shiny car anodized material. A little bit of roughness. See how shiny that is? All right. So that's all baked. And then we can go ahead and export this again. We'll call this Devlin v5. Save that. So that's saved in just a few seconds there. That's perfectly done. And now what Foveate does is you can replace this file. So this is super handy where if you are working on a project and you have a last minute design change and you have to change your whole presentation, you can just go here, press replace file, go to your project. So we'll go back to Devlin here, pick V5, and update this asset. And boom, now we have it. So we are able to now keep our moments, but the design has changed completely. Now, if you were to do this in a slide deck or something like that, that would be much, much harder. We have a question from Leo here. Hey, Leo. Can you alternate compare design options Foveate as separate moments? Yes, so what you could do is we decide to replace that file here, but you can just keep on adding assets to Foveate. So I have another version of this model that I rendered out and textured. So this is V2. And I can go ahead and now just compare these guys. So what you could do now is add a separate moment that compares these options. So I could look at this one, for example, and call this option A, and then show this one here and do option B. Just a very quick way that someone could show options side by side and be able to talk about them that way. Or another method that we have is, say you want to show options on top of one another. So I'll move this asset back to where it was. And let's say you want to reuse the same moments that you've already made. What you can do here with moments is be able to toggle on what's called asset visibility. Let me just actually go back here and create this moment. We'll call this option 1, and then create another moment, option 2. So we can go here and pick our asset and toggle on moment visibility. We want to do this for anything that we want to be able to switch between. And then in our moments, we can pick an asset that will be visible. So now someone can jump between moments and it'll show the different designs. So this is a very quick way where you can be able to show design options in the same context. So let's say that you had a whole site model, for example, a lobby design, and you wanted to show a design options within that lobby. This is how you do that. And this way you don't have to copy the whole scene twice. You just have the different options that you can flip between. And then of course, Foveate is an editor, so you can add other assets too. So for example, you always need a scale figure. So I have a folder of render people here. We all use these guys for all these different, ArcViz scenarios. But where's this dude? He's inside the model. But here we have our friend Chen. You always press F to focus on an object. It's heavily inspired by zoom selected in Rhino. So we can just place this guy here. And then we can have some scalar reference for this pavilion design. And then we can create another moment here called top of pavilion. And this whole thing is browser based, so this is just running in Chrome. So this might be bad for your internet, but what I can do now is make this link public so that anybody can see this. I can go to permissions. I'll invite Ian, for example, from my team to a scene, and I can email invite people as well who are not in my organization. So if you need to invite a client or something like that, you can always invite them, and they will now be able to join your scene. And if you invite them to this editor link, they can jump into your scene in real time, or the share link is a more minimal version of the scene that anybody can use, and it can be embedded into websites, things like that, what have you. Okay, yeah, great question about the moments tweening. So yeah, the moments, as soon as you use the arrow keys, they automatically tween to different positions. So let me just turn off the asset visibility for this particular model. I'll do this one. So yeah, Foveate will automatically tween between all of your moments as soon as you press the arrow keys. So let's say you want to change the FOV at this particular moment and the time it takes to get there, Foveate will automatically recalculate that information for you. and it updates this label here. So the assets that you attach per moment, they will change between moments as well. And then what I can do here is paste this link in the chat. So now that I've made this public, anyone can join this session. And you'll be able to see this scene. And as I update certain things, they'll update for you as well. So I can turn on, let's say, the blur of the background, and they'll update for you folks. Now that someone has joined my scene, here's Ian. What I can do is I can turn on the PFPs, so I can now see Ian in the scene and see that him moving around. So I can make sure that we're both on the same page, looking at the same thing. So you always know when somebody is present in your scene as well. And then Ian, stop moving for a second. So what I can do is I can click on his name. And what that will do is it'll bring me to his exact point of view. So, there's so many problems I've had working on projects where it's so difficult to tell where someone is talking about in a Rhino model. And, lots of times you have a PM or something like that who hasn't used Rhino maybe, and maybe they're only really used to using Bluebeam and reviewing designs. But this way, you can pilot them, or you can see exactly where they're looking at and understand what point of view you are. And then what you can also do is press present. So that what present does is now everybody who is part of this scene, who's at this link, as I move my camera, it's going to update for you on your end without the choppiness of screen sharing. So Foveate will automatically tween everybody's cameras together so that you can fly people through a space. But because it is an automated tweening, it'll automatically kind of smooth out all the camera information for you. Oh, so Leo has a comment about 2015 MacBook. Yes, so Foveate's it's a modern app. It's really designed for current stage computers, and especially Intel Macs have a hard time with 3D. So, most people who are using Foveate are running it on a Windows computer. It does work on tablets, and we do serve different versions for different devices. But yeah, Intel Macs, there's just something funky about them where they really struggle with 3D. The Mac Apple Silicon Macs, however, are really, really good at 3D. So whenever they change their architecture, that really helps a lot. Okay, so I think this scene showed off a decent amount of stuff. Let's just go to our key takeaways from this webinar. So with Foveate, what we really try to do is create an interface that's very intuitive. So with Foveate, you don't have to learn how to code. You can just use your 3D and CAD files, video files from Rhino, Grasshopper, Touch Designer, Revit, ArchiCAD, SketchUp, Blender, 3ds Max, what have you, and be able to create a 3D presentation that's easily updatable without really a steep learning curve. It's actually very simple. We designed everything to be drag and drop and very easy to use, just like PowerPoint. But you don't have to worry about formatting and kind of all like the busy work that comes with making a slide deck. With Foveate, we really want to help people communicate their creative ideas better. So Foveate is designed to be a more immersive experience than a 360 tour or a regular PDF slide deck, right? It's supposed to have all your 3D, your CAD, your videos, could have audio, your renders, and your PDFs all inside of one spot that give people full context to a project. So instead of jumping around from file to file to file and them having to sort of assemble a total vision in their head, it's all in one place. All the media is in one place. You can easily replace any of the assets that are part of your project. And they're just in one link that always stays the same. And then Foveate has all the roles and permissions so that you can keep projects organized. Only certain people need to be on certain projects. Not everybody needs exposure to it. This is a good way that people can be editors and viewers, and links can be kept private until you're ready to go public and show them publicly to people, whether that's through marketing and press, biz dev, what have you. And then Foveate's shareable everywhere. So the idea is that nobody has to download an app anymore in order to view a 3D experience. These days you kind of need an app even to open a PDF really well, and sign it, stuff like that. So we really want to move away from native apps in that sense and make sure that Foveate scenes are shareable everywhere to every device. Doesn't matter if you're on Mac, PC, Android, or iPad. You can just send a link and someone can open a scene on their device and start viewing it in a few short seconds. You can send a link in your favorite chat apps like Slack, Microsoft Teams, email, embed them into websites, what have you. And that link always stays the same unless you make a new scene. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for coming to this webinar. This is our first of many. Really great to have you all here. I hope I answered all of your questions. Please feel free to email us at team@foveate.com if you have any more questions, or if you go to our website, you're welcome to request a demo or a meeting with us. We can give personalized demos to certain companies, more tailored to your use case and things like that. And also, we have a 14-day free trial now. So we've opened up Foveate so that anyone can just sign up and try it out, and you get access to it for 14 days for free. And try it out to your heart's extent, and let us know what features that you would want, or maybe what funky use cases you have. But yes, thank you so much for coming. We can have a Q&A session now as well. We can open up the floor if people have questions. Please type them in the chat, and I'll answer anything. Perfect. That's great to hear, Gum. Oh yeah, we really want Foveate to be a super fast and easy way that you can communicate spaces. So you don't really need to know how to render. The whole idea is, even if you can model in something like Blender, a free app, you can make a pretty compelling spatial presentation just from that model. And we hope that Foveate's the way that everyone can align around one idea and kind of get excited about this project because they understand it better. Whereas if you send them a PDF of 20 renders, they still might not understand it. And thank you so much. Hope to see you soon.